Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another tournament review here at PMTT. This time, I am joined by Jacob. Jacob, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Henry. How are you?
Yeah, really well, really well. So this time we're going to be reviewing the most recent round of the Gauntlet 2023, which happened last weekend at Wargamers Hub. Jacob was there. He competed and he competed quite well because he actually won the entire event. So congratulations again. Hopefully you had a great time and played some fantastic opponents. And what we're going to be doing tonight is we're going to be quizzing Jacob on firstly how the tournament went and how his list played, but then he's got a background as a very, very competitive trading card game player. So mainly playing Magic the Gathering. And so I wanted to talk to him about what skills he kind of developed in that scene that he's been able to transfer over to AOS, and what skills would you think would transfer over but then wouldn't, that aren't that useful? So, but to start, Jacob, what list did you take to the Gauntlet round three?
So I was playing ogres, as you mentioned,
Yep,
and I was running a pretty traditional monster truck list, as they're
yep,
referred to. So
yep.
I brought four Stonehorns with a unit of four Mornfang and a Slaughtermaster because you can't go without an Andorian Locust at the moment.
Oh no, you need that wizard, you need that spell casting.
Yeah, so my plan was basically to just put some big boys on objectives, charge in and snag some kills when they can, and it happened to work out.
Yeah, no, it's I know a lot of people have said in the past that you don't win this game by beating your opponent, you win it by standing on circles. So, and Ogre Stonehorns are very good at doing both. So the first round, you got matched up against a Skaven player, Chris. How did that game go?
That was a phenomenally tight game. Off just straight off the bat, it was a lot more thinking than I thought I was going to have to do playing ogres. He was playing a very kind of killy Skaven list with the double reinforced rat ogres and two warp lightning cannons. And he
Okay.
actually, by my third turn, had removed almost my entire army off the board.
Ooh.
Um, but luckily, it's not about killing models in Age of Sigmar, and I was slightly better at standing on those circles. Um, yeah, so it ended up being a 21 to 20 win.
Yeah, that is incredibly tight. And I suppose one of the biggest things that, like walking around looking at the games, the fact that Stonehorns count for so many models, especially compared to something like Rat Ogres or something that's more elite, where they don't have the bodies to get on those objectives to really, really compete with you for them. And they've really got to try and go through the Stonehorns, which is very difficult in the best of times. So,
Yeah, I was fortunate as well that it was the Frigid Zephyr battle plan, so there was a bit of a limitation to him being able to levy some of his ranged attacking from the cannons.
oh yeah.
Got to hide in the squall, which is very flavorful for Stonehorns.
Yeah, did you manage to get many kills with the touched by the Everwinter? I think the rule is called.
I don't think I remembered to use that rule on Saturday at all, but it's not the most consistent one, even when you do use it. So
Yep. Yeah. So that was game one. So you got this very small win on that one. So going into game two, you matched up against Seraphon, one of the big scary powerhouses of the current meta, that was being piloted by Keegan, who's a long-time Seraphon player. So how did that game go down?
so this was kind of the opposite to my first round. So in the first round, I kind of realized that my opponent was much better at killing things than I was, and I would have to play objectives. Whereas against Seraphon, I very much need to lift important units off the board as soon as possible.
Yep.
And this was a game where the ability for a stone to fly over enemies after it charges was crucial. And I was lucky enough to get a 14-inch flyover
Oh,
and take out three of his key characters in one combat.
oh, that is
Um,
a huge swing.
yeah.
Yeah, so because Keegan was running, he was playing Starborn, but he was going very Saurus heavy. So how did you find? I know I've played like I am a Seraphon player primarily, not recently, but I know Saurus have had a massive glow up in the new book. How did you feel coming like up against them across the table?
It was fine. They kept coming back to life. He spent a lot of his cosmic power points to just keep re-adding D3 Saurus to the units because he had, I think, four units of
Hmm,
Saurus.
he was running quite a lot.
Um, unfortunately, as soon as the Saurus unit drops a model, it loses to a Stonehorn on an objective. And so that kind of just kept me on top of the points after I managed to kind of get some good charges on the first round.
Yeah, so charge in, do a little bit of damage, take the point, and then even when he's bringing models back, you're still
Yeah.
holding the point off him. So yeah, yeah, I could definitely see how that game could go. So 2 wins, it's fantastic. And then game three, you came up against Nathan with his Hedonites of Slanesh. How did that one go?
So Nathan and I have played a few times in events now. Actually, he shattered my dreams in the first round of the Gauntlet. He was a crushing loss. Um, it was a close game at the start, and unfortunately, and this just happens sometimes. It ended up being a bit of a dice game where Nathan had some miserable rolls, and I got some very lucky charges off, and
Mm.
it kind of shifted in an instant, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, yeah. It's sometimes like I told it to a couple of people on the weekend. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, but if you come up against someone who's lucky and good, then you're always going to be in for a rough ride there. And if that happens at the same time as your dice start to fail a bit, then it's often like you said, it's a very swing, and it's just kind of the whole game turns on a dime. So
Yeah.
yeah, did you find you were tempted much with the temptation dice, or
I refused 99.9% of the temptation dice. I took one of them to keep my his reprisal target alive, so that he gave it to me so I could pass an armor save, and I was like, well, it means 2 victory points. I'll take that.
yep.
But other than that, I just took the mortal wounds 100% of the time,
Yeah, okay, yeah. That's
and
that
that's
seems to be the general idea of what competitive players think is just refuse them. Don't give your opponent anything.
the buffs are so huge when they start stacking up those
Mm,
depravity points. It's not really the summoning that's a concern. It's just when they get that army wide neg 1 to hit, army wide mortal wounds on sixes.
mm,
It's too much. So you need to stay focused and just take the mortal wounds. It's almost always correct.
yeah, yeah. But it's a kind of a mark of you as a good player that you let him have the depravity at one point to keep the important things alive. So that's definitely my opinion. Like the good players will they know kind of this is the stereotypical, this is the best option, this is the best way to play this game or this list or this matchup. But they also can recognize when they need to go against the mold and go, no, it's actually better in this situation for me to do the opposite of what the kind of the internet says, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So 3 wins, which was awesome because I know last year for the Gauntlet you came to almost every single one. This year with the much shorter season, you missed the last round, round two, and unfortunately you had some horrible luck in round one. So this is kind of your first big win this season. Um, but you're up there in points now because it was a big event. So I believe you're in the top eight at the moment.
I think I'm in fifth position at the
Fifth,
moment.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good solid spot, but you're gonna definitely have to show up to the next one to guarantee it because it's a very tight field at the moment.
Yeah, very close this time around.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the other people that are up there were the other people that did well in this most recent round because the points you get for the series are based on how many people went to the event. You get more points the bigger the events. So you came first. Second was taken out by Jordan with his Blades of Corn army. And third was snatched by Jaden with his Maggotkin of Nurgle. And then Matt won the best sports, and Evie won best painted with her kits. You can actually see them up on the screen at the moment there in the bottom left hand corner. Um, but that was kind of Gauntlet 3. I'm assuming you had a pretty good time. Did you enjoy it? Just checking.
Oh, I always love coming to the Gauntlet events, even when the dice are against me. I've enjoyed every event you've run, Henry.
Excellent.
They've all been very good. Contest of Fools was great earlier this year as well. Um, so yeah, I when I see Henry is attached to an event, I try and put the best effort into being there.
Well, there's no higher compliment. I always tell people the best way to support a business or someone doing something is to just go and try and help them wherever possible. And so yeah, if you enjoy the events that I run, show up to them. That means I'm going to get more people coming. It means I'm going to run more, and then everyone wins. So, um, but the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about tonight was about your background as a card player. Now, I've never really gotten into the cardboard crack. I've always been a plastic crack fanatic. The one exception has been Pokemon cards. I've kind of dabbled with them throughout the years. So I'm a very much a novice when it comes to card games. So give me just a quick crash course, high level. What is the like? I understand like, and I'm assuming a lot of people watching this video will understand a lot of the basics about it. But what's some of the nuances that it takes to really push that really high competitive level for card games?
I guess I'll focus on a couple of things that I know translate really well into Age of Sigmar. One of the big key things in playing Magic is to understand sort of what position you are at in the game, whether you are the person who is being aggressive or the person who needs to be defensive when playing. And in Age of Sigmar, that 100% translates. It was a big part of my success on Saturday was identifying early. Oh, hey, actually against Skaven, I can't be the aggressor, even though ogres usually just charge in and kill things.
Hmm.
I had an entire battle round where I retreated with every unit, didn't fight a single combat playing ogres,
Yeah,
and just locked down some points. And that's kind of a skill that I learned playing Magic is sometimes you need to understand, oh, let's take our foot off the gas. You're the defensive player here, even when it doesn't look obvious.
yeah. Okay, so really kind of understanding who's control, like how the tempo of the game is going, and knowing that this is it might seem counterintuitive, but this is the right play at the moment to set me up for future turns.
Yeah. Another key thing as well in trading card games, in every trading card game I've ever played, is resource management, which is a very crucial thing in Age of Sigmar. It just presents itself a little bit differently, and I do think sometimes people in Age of Sigmar especially lose sight of when it's okay to let your models die,
Hmm.
and when you should very very much not let them die. I've definitely heard lots of people in events go, I'll just roll the dice for this combat. Like I'll stay in and fight. And it's like, well, actually, if you're that worried about that fight, should you be retreating
Hmm.
and coming back around later? Because even when your models aren't fighting in Age of Sigmar, they are counting on objectives.
Hmm.
They are a number that is important, and I think that sometimes gets a little bit lost.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, because that's it. You don't win games by killing your opponent. You win games by standing on circles. And if I have five guys and you have six guys. If those six guys are going to die in combat, you've still got six guys, so you can pull them out. You can still hold that objective. You can still rack up those points, and then force me to make the charge next turn, or dedicate some shooting, or put some of my resources into clearing your resources.
yeah,
Yeah. So yeah, no, that it's really interesting to see, like especially like my background. I've played tons of different tabletop games, and so a lot of the skills are kind of directly transferable. So back before pre-measuring existed, I got very good at judging distances on the table, and I could
yeah,
go, cool. I'm going to shoot my cannonball 37.5 inches that way and land right on the head of the guy that I was guessing that was roughly the distance. It's a less
yeah,
useful skill now with pre-measuring. Um, but even just the little things like positioning and being able to remember auras and kind of all those stacking synergies, it's definitely a skill that needs to be developed. But I'm always interested to hear what skills are transferable from other things. So same as like I'm always interested to know kind of a bit of the background of the people playing it because it attracts such a wide variety of people who play it, and everyone brings their own take and their own skills to the game. So,
yeah.
um, but with all that being said, they're both very like they're both kind of collectible. They're both hobbyists. They're both a bit nerdy. What's a skill that you would think would kind of float across the two, but it actually doesn't, or it's counterintuitive?
One of the big things is that in Magic, you don't know necessarily what your opponent is playing. You kind of have to put in a lot of guesswork and you have to try and sort of bluff and read. There's no real bluffing in Age of Sigmar. There's no trying to work out what your opponent's doing. Like you get to see their list. You get to ask questions about their
Mm,
rules and they have like they kind of have to answer it.
yeah,
So there isn't this layer of hidden obfuscated information happening, which makes for a very different experience.
yeah, okay. Okay, so it's kind of the difference between the kind of the secret and the open information really impacts how you play because you know what they can do.
Yep.
You're not necessarily trying to figure out. I would still argue that there is a bit of bluffing and a bit of kind of counterplay that does happen in Age of Sigmar. Like, I know at times I've measured something on one side of the board, but I'm actually kind of eyeballing something on the other side,
Yeah,
because I don't want to give away that I'm going to move up this side aggressively to bait out the redeploy or to bait out
yeah.
the unleash hell. So, and it is always a really good feeling, and sometimes it's a bit of a gotcha moment, which is bad. But it is a bit of a good feeling when you can kind of outguess your opponent, which is a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Uh,
It just moves around some of the sort of the processing and thinking.
mm,
You know, when I go and I stand against my opponent at the start of an Age of Sigmar game, I'm immediately formulating a game plan based on like what I know their army can do. Whereas in Magic, when I sit down against someone, I have no idea what your deck is until you put down the first card, and I might have kept a really bad hand.
Yeah, yeah. So, and yeah, and that's another thing that comes out with like list submissions and list review shows, and even just knowing about your opponent 5-10 minutes ahead of the game. You can read through their list. You, like you said, as soon as you know what you're up against, you start formulating that plan. And especially when it comes to, at least this is my experience, especially when it comes to somewhere like where we are in southeast Queensland, where there there's not an established meta in terms of what armies are necessarily coming. You were explaining before we started recording that you're working on a new army for the next Gauntlet event. Um, but there is a bit of a kind of, because we all know each other, because everyone goes to all the events. You do get a feel for your opponent. So, for an example, at the last Burley Brawl that I went to, in the final round, I played Scott. Scott's an excellent player. He's competed on the world's team, um, and our game was incredibly enjoyable because we started thinking through a lot of our thoughts out loud because we knew the other person wasn't going to make any of the basic mistakes. So it's like,
Yeah,
oh, I can move up there, but if I move up there, you're going to redeploy there, which will then mess me out for this. So I need to move this first. But then because you know I'm going to be doing that, and because obviously that's the obvious thing, and it was a fantastic game, and we both had a great time. But it was funny just interacting with someone who you've kind of already got this preconceived notion about they're not going to make a mistake. Um, Whereas other games, if you haven't played against your opponent, um, they can go a completely different way because you don't know their skill level. So
yeah.
yeah, so it is always interesting. I ended up losing that game against Scott, and I made a fairly basic mistake in the final round because I just got a bit tired and I just wasn't focused. Um,
Scott's a very tough opponent. I've had some phenomenal games against Scott.
hmm,
He's kind of like when I come up against him in events, I'm always thinking to myself, well, this is the raid boss.
yeah, so it's always good when you get to kind of the final round and you're like, oh yes, no, I'm playing someone who they're a final round type opponent. So,
Yeah.
which I'm sure a lot of people on the weekend when they got matched up against you were a little bit disappointed. It's like, no, damn it, I wanted to play Jacob in the final round because
Yeah.
he is one of the better players at this event. So he is kind of a final round type level. So. Is there anything else that you wanted to kind of bring up about the comparison between, say, Magic and Age of Sigma, or did we kind of hit all the talking points on the head?
I think we hit most of the big stuff. I think it's worth mentioning as well that in general, have switched almost entirely from TCGs to Age of Sigmar because the community is just a much nicer group of people. I've had a lot more fun even when I'm having a terrible day at Age of Sigmar events than I've ever had it playing Magic. Everyone's much quicker to kind of like check in between rounds and say like, "How are you doing?" You know, everyone's very friendly. There's a lot of people want the games to be fun. So there's a lot more like reminding people to not miss rules and things, and it's a very pleasant experience. Um,
Do you,
I
do
think it's
you,
worth noting.
Yeah, no, that is great, and I've definitely I've heard that from many other people about the community that we have in Southeast Queensland and even in the wider Australian community. Like there is a lot of really good people who play these games and who play them just for the love of them, and to play them to connect and meet other people. Do you think, in your opinion, because I know you've only really been playing for about the last 2 years for playing Age of Sigmar, do you think it's something that is something that we've had to foster and kind of encourage, or do you think it lends itself more to the social interaction because over, say, something like Magic or another trading card game, because you're interacting with that person for a bit longer, or there's a bit more of a buy-in, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think part of it is the perception of Age of Sigmar as being the more casual game than 40k helps a lot, like to set a baseline. I think a lot of people come into Age of Sigmar being like, well, this is a fun sort of beer and pretzels game, even though obviously it has a lot of high level play. I try and compete pretty hard when I come to these
Yeah.
events. Um, I do think that the community that's already established, like when I came in, it was a very welcoming community right off the bat when I came, because my first Age of Sigmar event was the Gauntlet last year in January, and I came in and I met, Scott and yourself, and everyone was very nice and kind of welcoming. And I've seen that extended to every new player that's come along to these events. Seems to be welcomed in with open arms, like, "Hey, you're an old friend. Come put some minis on the table."
Yeah.
Uh, it's a very pleasant experience, and I think it's kind of a mix of the established community plus the game lending itself to it.
Yeah, no, that like, and I would definitely agree. Like, I've played games where it hasn't been such a welcoming community, and it's not been as easy for new people to get in. And I've also been part of communities where amazing community, really friendly, but the game was that bit more serious, that bit more competitive. And it is a barrier to entry to tell someone, hey, welcome, come play tournaments. You're going to lose your first 10 games in a tournament.
Yeah.
That's it because the game is quite serious. So but no, I definitely agree. I think the community does a lot to welcome the game and to get new people in. And I just do want to call out everyone else in the community because I know, for at least for me, it doesn't automatically come naturally, and it is work to help people get into the game. Like, I'm currently prepping to go over to the World Championship, so I need as many high level tournament games as I can get. This week, instead of that, I went and taught someone how to play. I gave up that because as much as I would have preferred to play a tournament game, firstly, it's the right thing to do. It's always better when more people get into the hobby. But secondly, it meant that some of the other guys could then play a bigger, more serious game because I know they were trying to practice lists for Runax, which is a big
Okay.
tournament that's coming up. So, but yeah, like I do want to call out everyone else in the community because I know for a lot of people they do put a lot of work into making this community so welcoming. Um, and because of that, we get players like Jacob who can walk in, go to their first event, and then just go, "Yep, I'm going to try and attend every single event that comes out." So, which is fantastic. So, and you've got a spot for round four, I believe. I was checking the player list the other day.
I'll be there.
Excellent, excellent. So round four of the Gauntlet is going to be held down at T3 Games in Burleigh on the 29th of October. It is currently full. We do have a wait list of about 3 or 4 people. But if anyone who watches this video is interested in playing, get in touch with us on Facebook and register a spot on the waitlist because sometimes those waitlists just absolutely evaporate. So we had 10 people on the waitlist for the last one, and we had all 10 spots go within about 2 to 3 days before the event. So much so that we actually had a player rock up on the day who was like, "Oh, I didn't get a chance to register. I'm not on the waitlist. I'll see if I get a game," and he managed to get a spot due to some drops on that morning. So, but like Jacob said, it's a fantastic community to be a part of. And if you're a local down at T3, down at Burleigh there, definitely stop past and say hi. You will be welcomed with open arms by everyone in the community there. So, but thank you very much for coming on tonight, Jacob. I look forward to see you at the next Gauntlet event. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time. Bye.